right, so I'm currently reporting from Celebrity Poker Tour, which if you guys don't know what that is, I don't either. It's pretty much, Blake Wynn puts this together and he invites a bunch of people to come play poker. So I'm at this table right here, Rampage is next to me, and it's a poker tournament. First place is like $20,000, so I'm gonna try my best. It's a free roll, so you don't have to pay to play. Here we go, wish me luck, I don't know what I'm doing.
Alrighty guys, I would say we are back to regular scheduled programming, but it's quite the opposite. We are playing a tournament here in Las Vegas. This is the Celebrity Poker Tour. It's a free roll essentially, meaning it costs nothing to play. It's invitation only though. First place is, I believe, $20,000, and there are a few other prizes for the subsequent placings. I don't necessarily expect to make it that far, being that I never play tournaments, but I'm going to give it my best shot. In the first hand, it's the first level, which means the blinds are 1,000. We start with 100,000. These are all not real dollar amounts. They're just arbitrary tournament numbers. Anyway, late position opens to 3,000, and I make it 13,000 from the small blind with ace jack. By the way, Rampage is on my direct left. Among all these tables, he got seated right here at mine. How good do I run, right? Anyway, he cold calls the 13,000. Late position player calls as well, so we go three ways to a flop, which is pretty dry. 7, deuce, deuce, with a couple of spades out there. Well, no one's going to be too strong, I think, unless someone's got pocket sevens. So I continue with a bet of 15,000, and they both fold. Not really much action in this hand, but we do win the first tournament poker hand on this channel in probably 2 or 3 years. In the next hand, we are still in level 1. I raise it up with pocket kings to 2,000, and then a player in late position makes it 6,000. Good news to me, and even better when the small and big blind both cold call the 6,000. I, of course, am going to put in another raise. I make it $32,000. I've got the second best possible hand in Hold'em. No-brainer play here. But then the player who made it 6K, she decides all her chips are going in the middle, totaling 90,000. The blinds fold, and of course I'm going nowhere. I call. If she's got aces, so be it. But there are plenty of other hands that we are crushing. Not pocket aces, though, and that's what she has. Bad luck. We could still hit a king, though. You know, it happens, but not this time. We end up losing this pot. 193,000 chips going her way, and just like that, we are down to shambles. I believe I had like one big blind left, which I immediately lost. However, this tournament does allow one rebuy. I don't know if I could call it a rebuy because you're not buying anything, but a second chance, if you will. So I get another 100K in chips. This is my last bullet, though. In this one, Rampage opens from the big blind. That's right. The first ever hand where someone raises first to act from the big blind. My man Rampage does not realize that he is the big blind and tries to just raise right away. He makes it 6,000, and then the dealer is like, hey man, you're the last person to act pre-flop. So he laughs and takes it back. But what this means is we know he's got a hand. There's a limper, and I look down at ace queen in the small blind. Kind of weird because I know that he's got something good. But the hell with it, I'm all in for 75,000. That's how many chips I had left at this point. Rampage does not waste much time before calling. The limper folds, and it turns out we are up against King Jack offsuit. That is a good situation. We're off to a run out, and we don't lose this one. Very nice. We are back up to nearly 200K in chips. About as good a rebound as you could hope for after that kings into aces hand. In the next one, we are on level 5, I believe, of the tournament, where the blinds are 3,000, 5,000 now. My stack has dwindled to 125,000, not dollars, chips. It's tough for me to just call them chips, but here we go. In this one, early position limps, and I raise to 15,000 with pocket jacks. The limper makes the call, and we go to a flop of jack 5-4. Pretty sweet. Top set. He checks, I bet 12,000, and he calls. Turn is the queen of hearts. He checks, and I'm just going to keep betting because I have a really good hand. 20,000 this time. Sadly, he is no longer interested and lets it go. So again, not a ton of action, but we do win this pot as well. In the next one, well, There's not much of an explanation for this. As you guys can see, I've got 5-3 offsuit. There's a few limpers, and I decide to limp along in the small blind. Not recommended whatsoever, by the way. But alas, now it's on Ethan in the big blind, and he shoves all in. All the limpers fold, and well, I've got 5 high versus Ethan out of position facing an all in. Not much of a decision. Have to call here. If he's got it, he's got it. So I put in the money. I mean, jokes aside, I am happy to give this guy action in a free roll tournament like this. I know tournaments are much more his thing than mine. So yeah, I don't know. I figured if we beat him with 5-3 offsuit, it would be hilarious. And if I lose, that wouldn't be the worst thing ever. This is also a few days after a hustler session where I won a giant pot versus him. So perhaps a little bit of guilt played into this one. But either way, I make the call, looking for the memes, looking for the legendary suck out. And it turns out we are up against King 8 offsuit, which is kind of what I was hoping for, is that he would just have 2 overcards. Because even at that, we're not in terrible shape with some dead money in there from all the limpers as well. Off to a run out, and I'll let you guys see this one for yourselves.
Come on. Oh my god, it's so close.
Yeah!
Right, so as you guys can see, my expert play paid off, and we win a big one here versus Ethan. Unfortunately, this was about the last good pot that I won for a while, and that's just kind of how it goes with tournaments, as you guys know, I'm sure. If you're card dead for a lot of levels, especially in a tournament that moves really quick, you're just subject to die at the mercy of the deck. And that's kind of what happened to me. I got all the way down to like 10 or 15 big blinds. Long story short, ended up getting all in with King 7. Again versus Ethan, but this time he had Ace King. It was pretty comical though, because I flopped 2 pair on King Queen 7, but the river counterfeit my 2 pair, and we got knocked out by Rampage. So I guess justice is served after my ridiculous 5-3 offsuit play. Credit to Celebrity Poker Tour, though. They put together a really fun tournament. And of course, the fact that it's a free roll makes it a lot more enjoyable for most of the players. If there was real money invested, then I probably would have tried to play better. But instead, you know, everyone had a few drinks, they had some free food, and no one's trying too hard. So that was the story of my tournament. However, the day was still young after I got eliminated, so I wished Ethan good luck, and I am off to the Bellagio to play some 5-10 or maybe 10-20, whatever they've got going on.
All right, so that didn't work out for me. I ended up losing my entire stack to Rampage, which I think is fair, considering that he just gave me a bunch of money the other day at Hustler. If there's anyone I wanted the chips to go to, it's probably him. But yeah, tournament's not really my thing. However, there are plenty of cash games in Vegas, which I'll probably jump into at some point, either tonight or maybe tomorrow. I'm at Din Tai Fung right now, getting some dinner. But after that, we will reassess and see what there is to jump into. So I'll check in with you guys then. Talk soon.
All right, back in familiar territory, the cash games. We are playing 5-10 here. Turns out the straddle is on for 20 sometimes, so it's 5-10, 20, but there's still a cap on the buy-in. It's, I believe, $2,500 max, maybe $2,000. I'm not too sure. But either way, that means we aren't super deep with anyone here, since, you know, the 20 is on and most people don't have more than $2,500, but that's okay. Here we go. In the first hand, I straddle to 20. The button opens to 80. The blinds fold, and I look down at pocket 8s. Pretty good hand out of the straddle. Could mix between just calling versus the button raise, or getting aggressive and putting in a raise. This time I choose the latter option. Make it $380 to go, and the button makes the call. So we go heads up out of position to a flop. which is a good one to start the cash game session. It's king 8-3. It is all diamonds though, so flopping middle set on a monotone board out of position, I think the play is almost always just going to be to bet small, so that's what I do. $240 and my opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 4 of hearts. Could go either way between continuing to bet or checking. I decide to check, but looking back, I think this is a mistake. Probably should just continue betting here. However, I check and he checks it back. River is the 10 of hearts. He's only got $700 behind at this point, which was part of the reason why I thought checking the turn was okay, since getting all the money in by the end wouldn't have been a problem. But either way, I jam all in here on this river. Looks safe enough to do so. My opponent is no longer interested in this pot and lets this one go. So we win the first hand at least. In the second one, there's 2 limpers. Late position makes it 110, and I call on the button with 6s. Both of the limpers make the call, and once again, we flop middle set on a monotone board. It's 7-6-5 all clubs. This hand gets kind of weird right away as the second limper decides to lead out into the pre-flop razor for $100. She gets out of the way, but of course I'm going nowhere. Just a question of do we want to raise or call. I think calling makes more sense, so that's what I do. Turn card is not great. It's the 3 of clubs, so now it's really easy for him to have a flush. Even a straight wouldn't be too out of the question. And of course, the 4 of clubs is a straight flush at this point. He now bets $430. And, well, I'm obviously not loving the situation, but if the board pairs, we could win a big pot versus a flopped flush or perhaps even a straight. So I make the call. However, no such luck on the river. It's the 10 of diamonds. He jams all in now for $1,500. I don't waste too much time before folding and promptly get shown ace-9 offsuit without a club. Wow, pretty sweet bluff from my opponent. The kamikaze play definitely works out in his favor this time. Nice hand, man. In the next one, I straddled a 20. There's an early position open of 50. And I look down at pocket aces in the straddle. I make it $300 and he makes the call. Heads up to a flop, which looks great. It's king 7-7, 2 clubs and a spade. I bet 220 and my opponent makes the call, so I'm hoping he has a king. But then the turn sucks. It's the ace of diamonds. I mean, it is cool to make a full house. I'm not going to pretend like I don't still get excited when I make a full house. It does feel good, but that said, it's the one card that's going to disallow us from getting max value versus, say, king queen suited, for example, or hands of that nature. Either way, I'm going to try, though, so I make it $750 now, but after some thought, he lets it go. So we turn a full house, but we also turn 0 value. In the next one, the straddle is on. There's 1 limper, and I make it $100 on the button with 5-3 of clubs. Questionable, probably shouldn't do this. A little bit too wide, but this table was really passive, so I wasn't too concerned with any counter aggression, if you will. The straddler makes the call, as does the limper, so 3 of us go to a flop, which comes ace, queen, 6 with a club. First player checks, and now the second player leads out for 120. It seems really odd to me since I was the pre-flop raiser and he just limped in, so I decide to float. We do have some backdoor straight and flush potential with the 6 of clubs out there. I know it's a stretch, but really what I'm planning on doing is trying to win this one later on somehow. I call on the button, and the straddler folds, so we go to a turn, which is the jack of hearts, brings in the flush. He checks, and I decide to check it back. River's the 9 of diamonds, and he checks again. Well, I didn't float on the flop with 5 high just to give up, so I put in a bet of 240 at this point, and after a little bit of thought, he folds. So kind of a weird hand, but at least we win it. In the next one guy posts the blinds. I open with queen jack offsuit to $40, a little bit wide, but like I said, this table was pretty chill. Middle position player calls, and the player who posted also calls. So 3 of us go to a flop, which is king 10-8 with 2 clubs. I bet 80. We've got an open ender to the nuts. Both of the guys call, though, so a little bit concerning. Turn card's the 4 of diamonds, and now it's on me again. I think almost always just checking here is probably the best play. Once we get called by 2 players on the flop out of position, it's probably okay to start to slow down. But I'm feeling aggressive for whatever reason at this table, trying to put some pressure on these guys. Even with just top pair, they're not going to love this. So I put in $280. First player calls, the other player folds. So we go to a river. And it's a good one. It's the 9 of clubs, so we make a straight. However, it does bring in the most obvious flush draw on the flop. That said, if my opponent was hanging on with a king or really any sort of pair, maybe even 2 pair that is trying to slow play, we can get value from that now. And if he did have a flush draw, I'd expect him to raise the flop at least at a small frequency. So I'm not super concerned about it. My plan is to bet for value and then fold if he raises. So I put in $470, and after not much contemplation, he announces all in for $1,400. Well, kind of an unfortunate river card, but I'm fairly certain that we're beat. I could be wrong, but Queen Jack with no club here feels like one of those annoying folds you just got to make sometimes. So that's what I do. And this dude was pretty cool. He said good fold. I had a flush, but he didn't show me, so I guess he wasn't that cool after all. I'm just kidding. Nice hand, man. In the next one, I've got Jack 9 offsuit. I make it $50. Only the straddler calls, and we go to a flop of Jack 7 deuce rainbow. I bet $50 when he checks. He comes along, and we see the 8 of spades on the turn. Now he leads for 110. I'm not sure what that's about, but I still have top pair, so I call. And then the river comes the 9 of diamonds, giving me 2 pair. Top 2 pair, that is. However, any 10 now makes a straight. Now he bets 140. Well, I don't know. Most likely I should probably just call, I guess. But I feel like it's tough for him to have a 10, given how he played this hand. I mean, what hands that contain a 10 would call the flop and then lead the turn and then bet small on the river? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to understand how anyone here plays. I don't really frequent these tables at the Bellagio, thank goodness. But anyway, I decided to put in a thin raise. I make it $600. I think my image at this point would favor this play because most of these guys think I'm bluffing all the time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he called with like a weak or 2 pair or just a jack. Instead, though, he snap calls and we lose to Jack 10 offsuit. So shows you how smart I am.
All right, so the 5-10, that did not work out for me. It was like super boring. So I convinced a few of the guys at the table to start a 10-20. And, if you build it, they will come, as they say. And that's what happened. We have a 10-20 going now here at the Bellagio back there. I'm in for $30,000. I know this vlog's been kind of a mess. First a CPT, then some 5-10. Now we're in another game. But I hope you guys enjoy. It's kind of how it is when I visit Vegas. I don't really know what I'm doing, and I just kind of go with it. I'll report with you guys after. Hopefully we win some money. Let's go.
Let's see how this one goes. We start with a round of $40 straddles. I've got 10-9 of hearts. I open a 120, and only the button makes the call. Flop comes down ace, 7, deuce with 2 hearts. That's a flush draw. That looks like good news. I bet $100. Interestingly enough, though, my opponent now raises to $340. He's got $2,000 behind, and I'm trying to give this game a little bit of life. Show these guys that we are here to gamble, so I decide to jam it all in there. Trying to get a fold from an ace, that would be a miracle probably, but of course it would be a great win. If he's got a better flush draw somehow, he's probably not going to fold. If he's got anything good, he's not going to fold. This raise is kind of suicidal, and sure enough, he does call and shows us ace, queen of clubs. However, the turn is the deuce of hearts. So just like that, we are going to be winning this pot no matter what. My opponent is drawing dead. Inconsequential king of clubs on the river, and we win the first hand at 10-20. In the next one, we've got king 8 offsuit in middle position. Raise it to 60. Both the button and big blind make the call. So we go 3 ways to a flop of ace, jack, 10 with 2 clubs. Now, if you look at my exact hand, we've got a pretty sweet bluff candidate, I think. We have removal to king, queen, which is the nuts. Got removal to ace, king, and of course, as the pre-flop raiser, most importantly, we are the only player that can really have a bunch of strong hands here, like aces, jacks, 10s, ace, jack, ace, 10. Well, I guess these guys could have ace, jack, and ace, 10. This is Vegas after all. Action checks to me, and I am going to bet for all those reasons. I make it 120. They both make the call, which doesn't look great. Turn is the 5 of diamonds, and well, I'm just going to keep pretending I've got something strong. Presumably king, queen, or at least that's what I'm hoping it looks like. I bet 500 this time. First player folds, but the second player thinks about it for a bit. Then he folds too. All right, not a bad result whatsoever with king high. Now in this next hand, unfortunately I did not film it, so instead you'll have to enjoy this freeze frame of the table. I know it sucks to not have table footage, so I'll just make this one quick, but it was an interesting hand. And this one, the button opens, and I re-raise from the small blind with ace 5 offsuit. Not a play you should really make too often, but either way, that's what I do. I make it 660, and he makes the call. So we go to a flop, which comes down ace 9-3 with 2 spades. I decide to bet small, $400, and my opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 6 of diamonds. I check, and he decides to check it back. Then the river is not great. It's the 8 of spades, so it brings in the flush. I check again, and now my opponent bets 2,500, around a pot-sized bet. That's a pretty tough spot now with ace-5 offsuit. We've got no spade, which is a big component in our decision-making here. At the same time, though, I do have top pair, but also this is Vegas, and people usually have it, especially on the river with big bets. And, of course, the flush did get there. However, there are plenty of hands that could have floated the flop against my small size, like, let's say, Jack 10 of hearts, or maybe a hand like Queen Jack of hearts. I don't know, just different options, you know. That said, I also think it's worth noting that if he had a flush draw, he probably would have stabbed the turn at least sometimes. Maybe not. He might just check back and take the free river card, but people do often bluff with flush draws when they don't have any showdown value, right? So yeah, I think about it for a bit and make the call, and my opponent says you're good. So we win a pretty big pot here. Now we are back to table footage. In this one, I straddle to $40. Early position player makes it 120. The button calls, and I look down at Jack 3 of hearts. Good enough to call, I guess, so that's what I do. We go to a flop of Queen 7-5, all diamonds. Action checks around, and we see the 4 of spades on the turn. I check again, and now the pre-flop raiser puts in a bet of 240. The button folds, and now it's back to me. Well, here's the thing about boards like this, where there are 3 of the same suit on the flop, and everyone checked it. I feel like no one's too strong. You know, that's usually how it goes. And not just that, but if I had a flush myself or a set, I would definitely check twice in hopes of check raising after the turn or river. So I think we have to have other hands that we can balance that play out with, and they're not strong. So I think Jack 3 of hearts is not a good candidate. Let me go on record as just making that very clear. But I do think it's a good idea and a good thing to be mindful of. So I decide to pounce on what I think is some perceived, maybe weakness is too strong of a word, but not very strong bet here. So I put in $1,000 now. My opponent thinks for a bit, and it looks like he's going to call. So I'm already thinking about what we're going to do on certain river cards, you know, different plans, different bet sizes and stuff. But it turns out none of that matters because my opponent folds after some thought and says, I feel like you got it. So that's a good result. We win with absolute squadouche, but we take this pot down. Unfortunately, after this hand, disaster struck and the game broke. So, yeah, I know this was kind of an all-over-the-place vlog, and we didn't get much 10, 20, 40 footage or hands, but better than nothing, I hope. As always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands. Stay tuned for some final thoughts.
All right, so just finished playing at Bellagio, 10-20, and I won money, so that's good. I didn't win any significant money. I think a few $1,000s, which of course is more than welcome, but it's not going to make any huge dent in either direction for the bottom line at the end of the month or the year or anything like that. Still though, I am technically on vacation here in Vegas, and winning money on vacation is never a bad thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit different. You know, we played a tournament, then I played 5-10, then I played 10-20. It was kind of a medley, a little all over the place, but that's how my trip went. I'm gonna catch a flight back home either tonight or tomorrow morning, not sure yet, but then it's back to scheduled programming with Hustler Casino Live, etc. So I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, nice to bring these Vegas vlogs to you guys. And until next time, good luck at the tables. Peace.